Hello, this is following on from episode 5 of the podcast where Nathan and I were talking about component-based web design. And in that, we touched on the subject of web components themselves, which are, in simple terms, a web standards alternative to third-party component libraries like React and Vue.js. And the big plus with these is that they should last as long as the web itself. We've been experimenting with 2 web components for the media embeds on the show's website. A shadow DOM component for our audio podcast player by Dave Rupert, which I'll cover in the next video, and a light DOM component called Light YouTube Embed by Paul Irish, which allows us to embed YouTube videos without forcing the visitor to download all of YouTube's associated assets, regardless of whether the video is played. Like YouTube Embed only downloads the YouTube thumbnail image of the video, and then with CSS it places over the top a transparent gradient, which you might just be able to see, and an SVG play button. So visibly it looks the same as a regular embed. And this saves us well over a megabyte on the initial page load, which in our case is more than 10 times the size of the page that we're adding to. And of course, if a user clicks on the play button, the embed acts as normal and loads the needed assets. But I'm sure there's a decent percentage of people who will probably visit a page like this who may have already seen the video and will just be here to see the additional resources. And I'm surprised that YouTube doesn't do this by default, because if you install a YouTube iframe in the regular way, it's almost certainly going to make us fail Google's own core web vitals. As you can see, it's pretty poor performance. But if we use this solution, then we can just restore the performance back to what it was before. And I think it would be good if they did do that just for the environment, but also for us to consider those who have to proportionately pay more for their data, particularly those people outside of the West. But more positively, Paul Irish, who is the author of this alternative, is a Google employee who works on Chrome DevTools, Lighthouse, and PageSpeed Insights. And also, for the last 7 to 8 years, I've been using a similar technique by another Google developer called Amit Argal, and his has been working perfectly fine. It looks like he has updated this. The only reason that I've moved over to Paul's is that I've seen it recommended a lot recently, and also that it is on GitHub. So I can see if other people are having issues that I have not tested for. From my shallow understanding, I think the main difference is that Paul's solution is a web component in the sense that the JavaScript used is registered to this custom element, which we put in our HTML. It's not a shadow DOM component where the CSS is encapsulated in the JavaScript, although there is down the bottom here a link to a fork which is shadow DOM. And I've been using the term light DOM because that seems to be the buzzword of the day, but I think probably a better description is just plain old HTML. The instructions and the examples that are here on GitHub are straightforward and really useful. There are quite a lot of options, so it's worth looking into the documentation to check that you've understood what is there. But I will just run through what I did and the choices that I made. So as this is light DOM or just HTML, I needed to add in the CSS myself. So I needed to go to the source folder here and go to where the CSS here is. And I grabbed this and I placed this in my main style sheet. Let's just go over to that. Largely because it's just a small bit of CSS and we're not using much, and this is used on a lot of pages, so it seemed good to put it here and have it cached for the next pages. If it's a big chunk of CSS on a not often visited page, then I might separate that out, but that's what I've done. I've reduced it slightly because there was, depending on which options you choose, there was some text that you could overlay and some styling for that. I didn't need it, so I got rid of that. I just modernized a couple of things that I spotted here. So there was this CSS tricks responsive iframe hack that we've got over here, but now we have the aspect ratio property. I could just replace that here. And also, whenever I see something like left, top, bottom, right, I will swap that for new logical properties in case we ever change our writing mode. So this was top, and I've changed it to inset block start. But other than that, that's pretty much the same. Next thing I needed to do was to grab the JavaScript that was there and place it in my folder, which I've done over here. And of course, reference it on the HTML here just before my closing body tag, which I've done on the pages where it's needed. And with the JavaScript, let me just go over to that. You'll notice that it's really well commented, which is quite nice. So even someone like me can roughly understand what is going on with this. But I don't really need to serve this up as it's on GitHub to the users. So what I did is I took this and copied and pasted it into a JavaScript minifier. And I've used this one by TopTal. And what that does is strip out all of those comments and all the extra spaces. And what that did is, if I just go back to here, it actually saved quite a bit. So it is kind of 9.5 kilobytes on here. And when compressed and served up, it went down to 1.7. So the last thing that I actually needed to do here was to pick which options I'm going to put in my HTML. Now, I'm not going to cover all of the options here. I'll just talk about what I have used. So I'll bring back up the code editor and we'll go over to here because that's what's showing here. And in simple terms, all we need to do is to put the custom element in and the video ID that we've selected, and that's going to work. What that will do is serve up the default image, which is 480 pixels in width, which was too small for what I needed. And I looked around in the documentation here, and you can go up to, I think 640 maybe is the next one. And the one that I've picked is the max res default. And that goes to 1280. So that's the size that I'm bringing forward. And also I missed that because a lot of the examples are showing to serve up a JPEG, but you can actually use a WebP, and that's been working fine. So that saved something there. And that's all I've done in this case. I have, on some examples, you will see that they have wrapped around a link. So if JavaScript isn't working when someone comes, you'll just get the background image showing here, but it will do nothing. The button will be gone. Now you could click on it with this link and it will take you to YouTube where JavaScript is actually needed there anyway. But the problem with that is the way that is set up is not crawlable by Google. So what I've done is I've taken out a link and put it separate here. So it's easy to read for the screen readers, and that will just look like an image that's for the post title. And anyone whose JavaScript fails, then that's also going to be there. And it's perfectly crawlable on this. There was one issue, and I had to do this video for a second time because it was solved after this, where Google wasn't indexing the videos here, and someone did a lot of work on that. Let me just find the issue. Now it's just got closed a couple of days ago. And a big real thanks to Dave Smart here, who's come up with the solution. So it's really that the JavaScript now contains a no script embed in the JavaScript, not in the HTML. You won't see it there. That has the actual iframe there. So Google should be able to read that. But as one of his earlier comments was, one of the solutions was to use a tool, to use a schema to mark up that there is a video there. And I thought it was brilliant, and I started using that because it's so simple to use. So this is the tool that he uses. Let me just bring that up. And all you need to do is to pop in your ID, which I've done over here, and it will create this JSON. And then we can just quickly paste that. So it's pretty easy with this. Once I've set this up with a template, once I highlight something like this, it's going to show the different places where I need to change the ID. And all I need to do is to pop here just below the closing head, this that I've copied and pasted. And I don't know how important this is these days. A lot of SEOs are saying that schema is not so important because of the machine learning that is being done these days. But it's still just a quick thing to add this in. And one other thing that I did do as well to help on the speed is I've also put up here a preload, so I can load it in this thumbnail as well. So it's the first thing that's loaded. And I think that's what's allowing me to keep 100% score that I've been getting. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. That's all I wanted to cover. And next time I will be talking about the podcast player. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye.